So welcome back to lesson 2 of our online course for your Facebook posting strategy. Let's take a minute to review what we learned in lesson 1. We learned that online ministry is here to stay. And so that's why you're here, because you know the importance of online ministry. You know how important it is for us to really learn how Facebook works and how to use it to get more people connected to our church and ultimately connected to God. And so we also learned about the importance of understanding our audience. So I hope you took the time to really look at the demographics of your community, to look at the insights of your Facebook page, and to gain a better understanding of who it is that you are trying to reach and how you're currently doing. If we want to really do better than we're currently doing, we've got to know where we are before we can chart a course to where we're going. And so hopefully that was helpful in taking some time to learn about your community and about the demographics of the people who live there. We also learned that online ministry is simply discipleship from a distance. That when we're using online ministry, we're doing it in a way that we can disciple people and teach them how to think, to feel, to act like Jesus. And that's really our goal, is to do discipleship, to teach people what it means to follow Jesus. Now, we use social media to do that. We use it to help people connect to God. And so we learned also that due to COVID-19 and the pandemic, that people are attending church less frequently than before. And so it's going to be harder and harder to get people into your church. I'm sure that your attendance numbers for most churches, the majority of churches, they have not reached what they were pre-COVID. And I don't know how long it will take to get back to that. But here's what I do know, that we have an opportunity now to reach even more people than before, because many more churches are utilizing online ministry to do that. They're utilizing Facebook and their website and live streaming in order to reach people that maybe have not even attended church in the past. And so we know that online ministry can be simple, but it's not always easy. It's not easy to implement. It's going to take some work. It's going to take some research on your part to figure out how this works and how we can use it in order to reach more people. Today, our focus is on understanding how people use online platforms and how we can use that to our advantage in creating engaging content. There's a huge problem that we face, and we talked about this in lesson 1, but let me kind of go back and refer to it. Most churches use social media as an informational billboard. They just use it to list all of their activities, all of their events, and here's the time, here's the date, here's the location, and they just use it to post information only. Now, we talked about there's a problem with that, and the problem is that it's called social media. It's not very social when all we do is post about ourselves. What social media is really designed to do is to create conversations. It's designed for people to communicate back and forth. And so the reality is that most churches, their posts are very self-centered. Now, that may sound a little harsh, but it's the reality is that most of our churches, we're just constantly posting everything about us. Come look at us. Come see what we're doing. Look, and instead of interacting with the people who are actually following our pages, instead of interacting with the people in our community, what we're doing is we're just doing post after post about, hey, it's all about us. It's all about me. And if we're not even careful, it's all about the church and it's not about Jesus. So we've got to get back to really understanding why social media is there in the first place and why we should be on it. And if we're on social media, which I believe churches should be, then we need to be using it effectively to help reach people for Jesus. And so we need to do a better job sharing the hope that we have in Christ. Now let's talk about why there's so many online platforms. That's a question I get a lot, is why are there so many? Where do we even start? And we've got websites and we've got Instagram, and even on Instagram, you've got posts, you've got stories, you've got reels, you've got IGTV, and then you've got Facebook, and you've got profiles, pages, and groups, and you've got TikTok, you've got Snapchat, and there are new ones starting almost every month. And so the question is, there's so many platforms then what do we use and what do we do and where do we go? Well, the answer to that is you go where the people that you're trying to reach, where they are. And that's really what we're learning. And the reality is the lessons we're learning in this course will apply to any of these social media platforms. Now, the methodology may be slightly different, but the overall strategy that we're using will apply no matter if the platform is Instagram, Facebook, no matter where you're at, you can use this to reach people for Christ. Now, the key really is to go where your audience is. So based on what you learned in lesson 1, where is your audience? Let me kind of share a little bit about some of the major platforms and why they're there and how we can use them. Let's first talk about our websites. That is a platform for us online. Our websites are where people go to learn about our church before they visit. So newcomers to your church, they use your website to find out what time is your service, where are you located, what can we expect, what do you believe, who is the leadership, what kind of children's ministry do you have, and what kind of activities do you have, and how are you serving in the community. And so people will go to your website and they'll watch your messages, they'll get a feel for your church. And that's why it's important that your church website reflects the identity of your church. I'm not a huge believer in stock photography for your website because if you're not careful, it's almost a bait and switch. You can bait people into thinking your church is one thing when in reality it's something very different. If you're looking for a traditional church and the website looks very traditional and the music and that's the feel you get, and then you show up at the church and it's a completely different environment, people are not going to come back. And so we need to be real. We need to understand who we are and understand that it takes all kinds of churches to reach all kinds of people. And let's embrace our unique qualities as a church. And that helps us on our website. And so our website really is a place for people outside of our church to find more information about our churches. But for people already in our church, our websites are a resource. They come to our websites to find past sermons. They come to it to find opportunities for serving, to information about life groups, to find contact information, to give online. They're looking for resources that they can use to go deeper and make more connections and really learn more about following Jesus. And so our websites have kind of that dual purpose, a purpose for newcomers and then a purpose for people who have already been involved in your church. YouTube is another platform that we need to be familiar with. And I don't know if you realize, but YouTube is the second largest search platform on the internet. Now think about that for a minute. When people have a question about how to do something, where do they go? Well, they type it in Google, and when you see a video, you have a choice. You can either read an article or you can watch a video. Most times, I'm watching that video because I want to learn quickly, and I kind of scrub through it and find what I'm wanting to learn. And so if I'm trying to fix something on my truck, or if I'm trying to learn a new skill on the computer, or learn how to use software, if I find whatever it is, I love cooking, and grilling and smoking things, and I'm always searching new recipes, and so I'm online and I'm Googling, I'm watching on YouTube all these videos on how to do things, and YouTube has saved me a lot of time and frustration, because I've been able to find the answers that I'm looking for. Well, the reality is, on a spiritual level, people can do the same thing. Recently, my truck it just quit working. I couldn't put it into gear, it wouldn't move. And so what did I do? I went on YouTube, I searched for a solution. I'm trying to put in, has anybody else had this? I found a video and the guy had the exact same problem. He showed what it was. It was an easy fix. I crawled under my truck, got a $2 part from the parts store and fixed the transmission shift cable. And the next thing I know, my truck is back in service. That to me, that's incredible that's YouTube can help us do things like that. But now let me kind of turn that around on a spiritual level. When people are having trouble in their family, when people are dealing with anxiety or frustration, or people are questioning who God is and why bad things have happened, and they're searching for answers. What if they found your message or your sermon or a clip from your pastor? Or what if they found an instructional lesson that you've posted there and it helped answer their question? You see, people are looking for answers. So why not help them, and why not share with them the answers to the questions that they are asking? That's really what YouTube can do for you. Twitter's another platform. Twitter's been in the news a lot lately, but it's a short form post where you can post shorter content. And I know a lot of church leaders are on there. I don't see a lot of churches on there, but there's an opportunity there to reach people where they're at. Instagram is another. I mentioned just earlier, you've got Instagram posts and stories and reels and IGTV. And so Instagram is a little overwhelming if you're not already using it, but there's so much potential to reach people, especially millennials and Gen Z. That's where they're at. And so Instagram stories is a great way to share daily content, really short clips, behind the scenes information about what's happening in your church. And it's just really cool way of getting people more involved. And so Instagram it's one of the fastest growing platforms out there. And then Facebook. And if you're taking this course, you're wanting to learn more about Facebook. Well, why is Facebook important? Well, the reality is 8 out of 10 people in the U.S. use Facebook. 8 out of 10. That's a phenomenal access rate, right? When we step back and look at that, worldwide, there are so many people on Facebook. And if 8 out of 10 people are on Facebook, guess what? The numbers show that only 2 out of 10 people are actually going to church. 8 out of 10 are on Facebook. The exact inverse of that, 2 out of 10 are going to church. What does that show me? That shows that if we want to go where people are, we need to be on Facebook. If we want to go where the people are, we've got to be on Facebook. The people are there. Over 74% of U.S. adults visit the site at least once a day. And so if that's the truth, right, and that's what statistics show, people are there, people are engaging, people are interacting, people are scrolling every day. Let's put something in front of them that's life-changing, that can transform their life in a way to help them understand who Jesus is and how they can have a relationship with Him. And so if you're only going to be on one platform, Facebook is my recommendation for where you need to be. Now, and that's really what this course is about. And so let's kind of dive into Facebook today. Let's learn a little bit more about Facebook. I mentioned Nona Jones' book, From Social Media to Social Ministry. And I would say that's a must-read book. If you want to learn more, go ahead, buy it, get it on Kindle, buy the hardback, pass it around, but read it because it will give you some really good information on what we're learning here in this course, but it will take it really and kind of reinforce what we're learning. She said this, she said, we must become less concerned about the number of likes we get on a post and the number of views we get on a video and get more concerned about the number of lives that were changed because of them. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? We need to become less concerned about how many likes, how many follows, how many views, and we need to get more concerned about the lives that were changed because of what we post. That's going to be huge as we go through this course. Do you really want to see people's lives changed by the power of the gospel? If you do, then let's learn how to post and how to use the tools that we have, because there is a harvest field ripe for harvest. There are people everywhere who need Jesus, who are lost, who are hurting, and who are looking for answers. I want to help guide you, and I want to help give you the tools that you need in order to reach those people in your community and in your circle of influence who are searching for those answers. You have an incredible opportunity. And many of those people are not stepping foot into your church. So let's really think about how we can reach them. It's really why we're in ministry to start with. Now, I mentioned earlier that I was an engineer for over a decade, and It's something I love to do. I love computers. I love technology. I love the creative process of designing things, and I loved what I did. But there was this gnawing. There's this something in my spirit just kept pulling me back into ministry, and God was just speaking into my life and putting an impression on my heart, saying, "I've created you for more than this. I've created you. You could either spend the rest of your life behind a computer, or you could spend the rest of your life helping people find Jesus." And that's really what led me to go into full-time ministry. I felt this unmistakable call on my life that I wanted people to be introduced to Jesus. And I wanted to help them learn more about what it means to follow Him. And so really, for me, that's why I got into ministry. And I hope that's why you're in ministry too. You want people to know Jesus. Not just know about Him, but to really know Him. And so let's figure out how to use social media to do just that. About 5 years ago, there was a huge change in the Facebook algorithm. And I mentioned the algorithm is how Facebook chooses what you see. Facebook, they really want to put content in front of you that you're interested in. And so they try based on what you've liked and what you've viewed and what you've interacted with in the past. They make a guess on what you want to see. And those are the posts that show up in your news feed. And so when we think about their algorithm, about 5 years ago, Facebook made a huge change in their algorithm. And what they did is they devalued posts on Facebook pages. Up until that point, when you made a post on your Facebook page, most of the people who liked your page saw it. What Facebook decided is that people wanted to see more from their friends and from the groups of people that they interact with, and less from organizations and businesses and churches. And so the organic reach of your post, it nosedived about 5 years ago. And so from that point on, it became much more difficult for churches, especially, to get their content in front of people without paying for advertising. And so what Facebook wants, they want more relational content. And believe it or not, I actually think what they did was a good thing. I think what they did was they realized that there was so much spam out there, so much spammy content from businesses, so many informational posts like this, do this, see us, all those type of posts, that they decided we want to put content in front of people that really does make a difference. And for us as churches, as long as we understand how that works, then let's use it to our advantage. And so really, that's going to drive more people to Facebook groups. And let's talk about the difference between Facebook pages and groups. Here's how I like to explain it. Our church, we're on the main street in our community. And it's the small town Main Street, just like you can imagine. And you walk down Main Street and there's storefronts and there are windows, and you can kind of look in and see what's there on each business and each storefront. In our church, we took an old business and renovated the whole building and converted it into a church. And so as people are walking down Main Street, they're looking in and they're saying, what is this place? What is, and they're trying to determine, okay, this is a church, and what are they about? And so we've got an opportunity as people walk by the street, they look in the window, right? They look in that front window, they determine who we are and what we're about. Well, that is what your Facebook page is. It's the front window of your church. As people are walking by on social media, they're making a determination about who your church is, about what you believe and what style you are and what you're doing in your community. If they drive down the highway, they make that same determination as they look over and look at your building and your signs. They're doing the same thing walking down our main street and looking in our window. But that's what your Facebook page is. It's the front window into your church. Your Facebook group, though, it goes beyond that. It opens the door and it invites people in. And now it invites them into a conversation with like-minded people to learn more about who your church really is, to get to know the people inside of your church. Every church, I really think, needs both. They need the Facebook page They need the Facebook page that helps them kind of share who they are, share their story, but then they need to be in conversation with the individual people inside of the church, and that's your Facebook group. I'll give you an example from my life. Recently, I was looking to replace our gas grill that was over 20 years old. We had a gas grill that's over 20 years old, and I was wanting to get something, so I was wanting to get a pellet smoker, okay? I mentioned earlier I love cooking, and so I started doing research. I'm one of those guys, I get on the internet, I research things to death before I make a purchase, okay? I'm watching videos, I'm watching reviews, I'm learning all I don't make many spur of the moment decisions because I have to research everything, and I'm researching this. And so the next thing I know, I start seeing all these ads pop up on Facebook, right, about the very thing I was looking at. And that's just retargeting ads from Facebook. And so I started watching videos about it, started learning more. And so I went and liked the page of a few different manufacturers that I was interested in. And then as I got more involved and started narrowing down my choice, I found a Facebook group full of people who owned those grills. And so I joined that group and I started listening to their conversations and what they liked and what they disliked. And I could even ask questions in that group. And so what I found was I found a community of like-minded people, right, that were using this, and I got all sorts of ideas from them. And now I ended up purchasing one of those grills. Why? Because I was researched it. I found some general information about it. As I learned more about it, I got involved with a group of people. I realized it was not just a company, it was a tribe of people, right? And let me kind of take that. If a business can have that type of an impact on your purchasing, what kind of impact can a church have on your soul? Think about this. If someone just started and they were interested in learning more about your church, they started kind of from a distance, learning more, lurking behind the scenes, looking at what you posted on your page. Then they kind of get drawn in and they join the group and they start meeting the people. They start forming connections. They start becoming part of the tribe. What happens is before long, your church is not just a church they know about. It's a church that they're part of. They're learning more about Jesus. They're learning more about this community of faith, this local body of believers that's organized online to help them learn more about how to follow Jesus together. And so what it does, it moves you beyond Sunday morning. It gives you an opportunity to reach people and disciple people every single day of the week. And so that's how pages and groups work together. I want to really get into the focus of this course, though. And today I'm kind of going to introduce to you and do the basic kind of explanation for where we're going. And then we're going to spend the next few days, the next few lessons kind of diving deeper into this. The posting framework that I mentioned in lesson 1, I want to go back to it. And we want to jump into this a little bit more. It's kind of a 3-step process. We want to create conversations. We want to build relationships, and we want to challenge people to take next steps. Those 3 simple things that really can make a dramatic difference in what your church is posting on social media. If you look at your posts now, I would guess that more than likely, as we've already been discussing, that most of them are informational in nature. That's the easiest thing to do. We have information to get out, so let's share it on social media. I want to challenge you to divide your post into groups. What we're going to do is kind of think about how we're posting, and 1/3 of our post should be about creating conversations. 1/3 of our post should be about building relationships. And 1/3 of our post should be about challenging people to take their next step of faith. And so let's kind of dive into each one of those and talk about what that looks like. If 1/3 of our post should be about creating conversations, how do we do that? If you want to create conversations, you have to ask good questions. I feel like one of the skills that's needed most in the church world today is to be a good listener, to be someone that asks good questions, that we could actually engage people and interact with people. And instead of just constantly sharing what's on our mind, that we become better listeners to hear the questions that they're asking. And so asking good questions, it takes a lot of practice. If you've ever taught and you've asked a question and the whole room just goes silent and just stares at you, you know the pain of the crickets that you hear when you ask a bad question. You know the awkwardness it creates. The same thing is true on social media. It can be awkward when you don't ask good questions. So we've got to learn to ask better questions, questions that create conversations that people actually are interested in answering. And we need to ask questions that people are asking. I mentioned earlier, people are online all the time searching for answers to questions, to problems that they're facing in life. Let's look at the trends and let's look at the questions that people are asking and the struggles that people have, and let's think about how we can answer those questions they're asking. Not every post you make has to be about spiritual things. Now, you can ask questions that get a lot of interaction. You can ask, hey, do you like hot dogs or hamburgers better? Or what's your favorite pizza topping? And you'll be amazed at how many people start commenting and liking and interacting with that post. And in all honesty, those posts are helpful because what they do, the more people comment and interact with what you post, the more that your post will show up in their news feed in the future. You remember that Facebook algorithm we talked about? That's one of the ways that you use it to your advantage. The more people interact, the more it's going to show up on their feed. But we have to go beyond that. We've got to take questions beyond the surface level, right? And if we want to be able to build the relationships, which is where we're going next, we've got to ask the questions, the real question. We've got to answer the questions that people are really asking. We've got to invite them into the conversation. And so we've got to go deeper. So we get asked questions like, what are your favorite family activities to do when you're cooped up inside of the house, when you're quarantined? How are some ways that you pass the time together? Those are questions, right, that you can then kind of interject in that, and you can turn those conversations to a spiritual level. And so that's really what we're doing when we're creating conversations. We're creating conversations and we're looking for opportunities to take that conversation, right, and turn it back to Jesus. And introduce Jesus, not in a pushy way, but in a way, hey, this is what I've learned in my walk with Christ, and let me share this. And we're just creating those conversations. It's a safe place, right, to have conversations. Too often online, it's just a platform for everybody to yell at each other. And that's not what we want on our church pages. We want it to be a safe place to ask real questions. So that's the first thing we do. A third of our posts are creating conversations. The second third of our posts, though, are about building relationships. Now, when we build relationships, these posts are not about us. Now, that's a tendency. We want to just say, this is what we're doing, this is who we are. But when we build relationships, we're more concerned about hearing their stories and about sharing their stories. And so one of the best ways you can do this as a church is to interact with other businesses and organizations and other people in your community. And so I love, there's a pastor I listen to, Jeff Henderson, who runs the company called FOR, F-O-R, and he was talking about this when he was pastor at Gwinnett in Atlanta, that at their staff meetings, that they would take time at every staff meeting for everybody to go online and to just start interacting on social media with the people in their church and with businesses in their community. They would just go in and start making comments and interacting. What are they doing? On behalf of the church, now what they're doing is they're showing that they care. They're showing that they value other businesses or organizations. They're showing that they're a valuable part of the community. That's really important because we're gaining the trust to share our message. People, the old saying, right, that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It is so true on social media that people really want to know that we care. And the way they know that we care, right, is by us getting involved and listening to what's going on. And so we can do it in a number of ways. I think we've got to become better storytellers. And when we see something, when we see God at work in the life of somebody in our church or in our community, then we become that curator where we share that story. We tell that story. We help put light on it. We help bring awareness. We help gain support for what they're doing. And as we do that, what are we doing? We're building a relationship. And so we're creating conversations, but then we're building those relationships and on a deeper level and gaining the trust of the people in our community. And so that, again, it moves us beyond a 1 hour a week focus. It takes us beyond Sunday morning and shows that social media can be used every single day of the week. And then the final third is we want to challenge people to take next steps. We want to challenge people to take their next step of faith. And we've got to realize that people are on all different points in their spiritual journey. And so this is going to look different for people no matter, depending on how spiritually mature or immature that they are, whether or not they even know Jesus. And so we want to give opportunities at all points of all points of the spectrum, of the timeline here, for people to jump in and take their next step. And so we want to give them opportunities to put their faith into practice. And so we want to give content. We want to share content. We want to share resources. We want to share tools. We want to share instructional videos. We want to share training. We want to do things to help people go from head knowledge into heart knowledge. We want to do things to help people to take the next step and give them challenges to do online and give them opportunities to learn more about Jesus. This really comes down to teaching spiritual disciplines. How to pray, how to read your Bible, how to fast, how to spend time with God, how to serve, and giving them opportunities to serve. And so there's so many ways that you can do this. But again, that's kind of the rough introduction here. A third of your posts are creating conversations, a third are building relationships, and a third are challenging people to take next steps. Now, you may ask me, okay, that sounds good, but where do I post about the things that we have going on at church and the opportunities that we have and the people we need to serve? And because that doesn't really fall into those categories neatly. Well, let me give you a real life example. Not too long ago, our church was collecting cans of green beans. Now, this is, many churches do things like this. It was back at Thanksgiving, which was a while back, but we were collecting cans of green beans for our local soup kitchen. They needed 1,000 cans of green beans. And our church said, hey, we'll do it. We'll collect them. We'll get those together for you. We'll give people a chance to give and do that. Now, typically our post would be something like, hey, we need a bunch of green beans. Here's how you give them. Drop them by the church this day, this time. We need them for the soup kitchen. And that would be it. That's an informational post. That's how most churches use social media. But how would we use that if we were creating a conversation? Here's a way we could do it, to take that same announcement and make it to use a conversation. Okay, let's hear it, people. I want your best green bean recipe. We know you love green beans, whether it's ham hocks or whether it's green bean casserole. Share your favorite recipe in the comments below. And by the way, green beans are important. We're collecting them for our local soup kitchen. So bring your green beans by the church, and here's that. So what have we done? We've invited people into a conversation. So some people may get excited about that. Oh, here's a recipe. Here's my favorite recipe. Let me share it. Let me share a link to it, right? And let me tell you what I like. We're inviting people into a conversation. And instead of just posting, here's what we want from you, we're asking you to join in a conversation. So that's a really neat way to do that. If you want to use it to build a relationship, let's kind of take another angle on that same thing. We could share a testimony of how the soup kitchen has helped someone in the past with the food boxes they're giving out. So find someone that was a recipient of a food box in the past, and they could share, hey, last year when I received this food box, it made so much difference for my family. We were wondering how we were going to get together at the holidays and have a meal, and with this food that was provided, we were able to get our whole family together and really be thankful this year. Or that's one way. Or you could use it to share the story about the soup kitchen itself. And hey, let me tell you about this great ministry in our town and what they're doing and how they're changing lives. What are we doing? We're engaging. It's not about us. It's about, again, it's about understanding we're all on the same team together and that we're working together. It's about being part of a community. And then, right, once we do that, we can share, now this is how you can get involved. What have we done? We've built a relationship there. We've earned some trust. We've gone beyond just the ask, and instead we've really gone deeper than that. The third way, if you want to challenge people to take a next step, then you kind of take the same announcement and you turn it around about generosity, about giving, about how it's the responsibility of every believer to live. It's better to give than to receive, that we serve a generous God, that everything we have is because God has blessed us with it. We've been blessed to be a blessing. And so because of that, one of the ways that you can share that blessing with others is by donating this. And we've turned it into the spiritual aspect. And again, instead of just asking, we've shown people how it's part of their spiritual journey to give to others in need. And so it's about life transformation. So those are just three real quick ways to kind of show you how you can take any announcement and you can share it from those different angles. But the reality is all three of those angles are not about us. They're not self-centered posts. They're all about helping other people get involved. They're about creating conversations, about building relationships, and about challenging them to take their next step of faith. So your homework for this lesson is to look at your current post on your Facebook page, and if you have a Facebook group, to look at those, to see what you're currently doing, to see how it's working, to see if your posts fit into any of those third groups, right? The creating conversations, the building relationships, the challenging them to take a next step. And if you're heavy on one of the three, or if you don't have any of them, that kind of shows you where you need to start. And I would even challenge you to take a post that you've written in the last week or two. Take one that you've written and rewrite it in order to create more engagement. You could rewrite it to create a conversation. You could rewrite it to build a relationship, or you could rewrite it to challenge people to take their next step. In the next lesson, in lesson 3, we're going to be talking about how you actually build and brand your Facebook group and page. And so we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of how this looks and how this works for your church. So thanks again for joining in, and let's keep going. Don't give up on me now. Let's keep pushing through and learning more about developing this Facebook posting strategy.